Hello and welcome back to any returning listeners. If this is your first time listening, my name is Hardiel Pinto. I started my own small business last year called Pulp Serial, where I distribute movie serials, TV shows, and feature films, all with roots in pulp fiction. This is my podcast, One on One, where I take somebody that I admire on social media and I force them to be my friend for a half an hour. Today I have Nick from Black Girls Do Stuff Too. Hey,
Hi,
how you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. I'm just kicking myself for not asking you to be on here sooner.
I don't know. I feel like any sooner it might have been too much for the people. They had to like wait and anticipate this.
I think you're the first East Coast person I've talked to so far.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, because it's either been West Coast, like people like Sade, or like
Hmm.
all the way in England, like people like M.
Okay, two of my
So,
favorite people.
oh yeah, no, I love both. I think that's how I found you. Was I think
Likely.
Yeah, because I think I found you through Sade,
Okay, okay.
which is cool. I mean, I like being friends with her on Twitter because she has introduced me to a lot of podcast people. I think that's how I found M as well.
Mhm.
I think you
Mhm.
both followed me, and then I was looking for more people to follow because like there was like nothing going on my feed. I'm like, I need more film people to follow. I need more people in general to follow. So I was just looking through
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
following list, and then I found you. I found M, and I got no regrets.
Awesome, awesome. And same here. Yeah, I don't remember exactly when I started following you, but I'm pretty sure we had interaction. Because a lot of times I find that that's how I end up following people is they made me laugh at some point. And I'm like, okay, I need to see what they say all the time.
Right on. That's cool. So, what made you want to start your own podcast?
For me, it was I had this idea probably a year before I started it. I just found that in areas like movies and TV and comics, specifically within like horror and sci-fi, which I love, and fantasy and action that Tiffany loves, you don't see a lot of representation from Black girls and women. Whether it be in the films or talking about the films or talking about the content, like a comic book or something. And unless it's like specifically targeted to Black people, like Black Panther, it's like people finally gave a voice to people, but only for that movie. And it was like, we don't want you guys talking about Infinity War. We just gave you Black Panther. You know what I mean? And so I was like, you know what? If I'm not going to be able to find it out there, then I'm going to put it out there. And Tip is my cousin, so and we see movies together all the time, and we talk about things like this just on our own. So it made sense for us to do it together.
Right on. No, I fully understand the representation thing. I don't know if you've seen the statistics lately. What was it? Asian Americans only have 5% of speaking
Mhm.
roles in film, and then
Mhm.
Latinx people only have 4.5%
Mhm.
of speaking
Mhm.
roles in film. And then even when it came to directors, was it when they went over like 1,200 different movies, there were only 28 different Latinx directors,
Mhm.
and only one of them was a woman.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, being a minority is already putting you at a position where you're not seen as often and you don't find the representation. And then when you add gender on top of it, being a woman or someone who identifies as a woman, it's even less, you know? And so it's just like, we need more of it. And it's great that it's moving in that direction, but we want so much more, like there's so much more opportunity for there just to be more of everyone should have the opportunity to see themselves represented in their aspirations.
Exactly. I just wish, because as far as movies go, it's getting both easier and harder at the same time for these voices to be heard, because it is great and bad that there are just so many outlets and so many movies being made now. But
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, I don't know if you've noticed this, but definitely I've noticed it, and a lot of other people have, with like smaller movies. Even when they do play at a multiplex, like if they do have a director who's in who is a minority, or if there's just a smaller film in general, like
Mhm.
they'll get what, like, two showtimes a day, and then
Mhm.
something like Joker or a Chapter Two. Literally, my local theaters here had both those movies starting at like 9 a.m. in the
Mhm.
morning, and
Mhm.
then playing till midnight. They'd have like 20 showtimes.
Right.
So even when you get like your foot in the door, and even if you can like get your work to be played alongside, other more expensive work, it's still harder to get people to see it. Because I've definitely missed out on movies this year because they didn't have enough showtimes, so to where it wasn't convenient for me to go, or like something like Teen Spirit. I really wanted to watch that movie in theaters with Elle Fanning. Like I
Mhm.
heard that was
Mhm.
really good. That literally played for 6 days here.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know it was only like 6 days. That's insane. But like you said, like it's funny because like so by trade, I am a business person. I am a part of the the machine that is capitalism, right? Like I have my MBA, I studied business in undergrad and all that. So like if I completely remove like the humanity from it, I can understand why showtimes and distribution is the way that it is. Not that I agree with it, but I can understand it from a business standpoint. But it's always like one of those things where like, you have an independent film that is so good and it's getting buzz or being seen, but it's not available to everyone or all people. So no matter how hard the people involved with the film push for it, um, it's almost like they're pushing, and Twitter's a gift and a curse because it gets the message out there and it can really make things appear to be doing way better than they are. But then you look at the numbers and it's still really low because people don't have access to the film and can't go see it. Or, like you said, the show times are what they are. And so it's one of those things where you're like, I'm not against this whole like Netflix of distributing films and things of that nature because it gets it into people's eyes and their hearts and their minds, but it just sucks that like there's so much backlash against it to where it's like, well, it was on Netflix, so it shouldn't be nominated for these awards or those awards or whatever. Not that awards are the end all be all to everything, but when you do work, you want to be recognized for it. I mean, so it's just, there's so many factors that go into it, but I think ground one and step one is really at least having an opportunity to put it out there and give people representation and allow them to create their art, and give it to people who want to see it.
Exactly. And like, yeah, you mentioned Netflix. Like I don't fully hate any one big corporation, because I don't know if you see this on Twitter as well, when people talk about Netflix and Disney. Sometimes they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I 100% hate them because that's all I could ever feel about them.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like, I fully acknowledge that they both have problems. I
Mhm.
mean, clearly they do, but I do like that they do give some opportunity to people, and I just try to see the bright side of it.
Yeah.
Kind of like, again, with Netflix and Roma last year, like that
Mhm.
was amazing. The fact that that film got to be in 600 theaters. I mean, that might not
Right.
seem a lot to people, but I mean, I've seen independent films that get like 20 theaters, and that's
Right.
it. And so for a movie starring an indigenous woman like that takes place in Mexico in the 70s, I
Mhm.
mean, that meant the world to me, because I mean, I don't know if you've seen, I've talked about on Twitter way too many times
Yeah. Yeah.
about
Yeah.
how the actress in that movie looked like our grandmother, who,
Mhm.
when she was at that age, and
Mhm.
she is an indigenous woman. She's from Yucatan, Mexico. She's we're half Mayan,
Mhm.
half Portuguese, and so to see a woman that looked like her speaking an indigenous language from Mexico, I mean, it's still my favorite movie of all time. I know I'm biased, obviously,
Yeah, but
because
that's
of that,
important.
but yeah, it felt amazing to go to our local art house theater and to see that
Mhm.
on the big screen.
Mhm.
And then even after the Oscars, luckily it did get a re-release in theaters,
That's
and it was
awesome.
playing at one of the local cineplexes too. It wasn't even just the art house theater, and I got to see it again a second time on my birthday.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I don't know, like, as much as I do have problems with certain things Netflix does, I do appreciate the fact that they will put out films like Roma or like The Irishman, which is
Hmm.
oddly a difficult sell apparently now for people, even though it's a Martin Scorsese movie, which you think wouldn't be.
Yeah. I So I'm gonna watch it. Being a part of film Twitter, a lot of times you'll see me say things like, "Well, yeah, I'm gonna watch it," and it's because I feel like I need to be exposed to the art. And sometimes my opinions are changed, or whatever. I'm a fan of just movies in general, so I don't know, and I can't really name outside of Ryan Coogler. I can't really name any director, filmmaker that I'm just like, I'm such a fan of them and I'll stand by them no matter what and all this. And even with Ryan Coogler, I wouldn't say I'd stand by him for whatever, but him and I would say Jordan Peele, as a Black person, they give me a perspective on everyday things and experiences that don't get brought to the screen the same way when it's not someone who's gone through it or who experiences it, right? Um, the Scorsese films, I'm sure for someone, he does that to them, and he's a great storyteller, and he does give a different perspective and voice to people who are typically portrayed in a certain way, like a criminal or whatever. He kind of shows the humanity in that, and I enjoy Scorsese films. Um, the Irishman itself, maybe I just don't get it yet, and it won't be until I watch it. But I don't understand like the hype around it, other than like I get it has a good cast, and I get that it's by Scorsese, but like I just don't understand like people are like extremely either excited or like against it one way or another, and I just feel neutral right now, and I think that's until I see it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, I've even said on Twitter before that I feel like I should be excited for The Irishman. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm gonna watch it, but I just haven't felt that like special feeling like, oh, a Scorsese movie is coming out.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I think definitely part of it for people is the fact that Robert De Niro and Al Pacino get to share screen time,
Right.
which they rarely have over the career. I mean,
Mhm.
when you think about it, because yeah, they were both in Godfather too, but they were both in separate parts of that film.
Right. Right. Right.
And like, I think the last movie they were in where they shared screen time, which was Righteous Kill, which isn't a
I
very
think
good
so. Yeah.
movie. So to see something like a prestige picture where they're both in it, and then
Mhm.
the return of Joe Pesci, who just kind of does what he wants. I can't remember. I was listening to Mark Maron's podcast. I can't remember who was talking about Joe Pesci. I can't. I feel bad. I forget who the guest was on that week. But like, apparently Joe Pesci was just kind of mouthing off like at a party, like, I don't know if I'm going to go back and do this movie. I don't care. I don't need this. Whatever. And it's funny because it's like this is definitely one of the biggest movies of the year, and Joe
Right.
Pesci has that attitude, like, oh, I don't need this big Oscar movie. I don't care.
Right, right, right. I love Joe Pesci. I really do. And I love Al Pacino. I love Robert De Niro. This is why it's weird to me to feel this neutrality for this movie because I everything if you like know my like what the type of movies I like and things like that, like everything about it should like make me really excited for it. But I just don't feel that excitement yet. And maybe it is all of the like pomp and circumstance around the movie before it's even come out. And so I'm just like, okay, let me see it for myself, which I will do anyway. Let me see it for myself. Let me form my own opinions, and then I'll become hyped for it once I see it, and I've decided what I want to feel about it. But don't try to make me feel a way about it. You know?
Exactly. Because again,
Yeah.
as much as I like film Twitter, I feel like people kind of do get that attitude where it's like, no, 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 I'm excited about something. You also have to be excited about something.
Yes, and it's also like a lot of I'm excited about this, and it's this person who's behind it or these people who are behind it, and so that makes it more legit. And so now you have to like it, especially if you've liked something else in the past that wasn't this, and I'm just like, please go away.
Exactly. Because again, like as much as I like that, I've made a lot of friends on there, and I get to talk about film.
Hmm.
There are just a lot of people who are really judgmental of other people's taste.
Oh yeah, for sure. I see not only the judgment of people's taste, but then like I see the backtracking on it too. It's like, let me ask a question to the general audience, or let me make a statement to the general audience. And when people come for me, I am going to say, like, I can hold my ground and I can, like, judge this thing, but then I'll do the same thing to others and then not see the issue with that, you know? And so I talk about that often. I used to. I don't even do it anymore because I'm just like, whatever. But I just feel like, yes, everybody is entitled to their own opinion, including you. But you have to keep that in mind when other people have their opinions of whatever it is, also, because there is a difference between just having an opinion and then like making a blanket judgment on not just a movie or a genre or a studio or whatever, but on the people who enjoy those things as well. You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because yeah, all this really is opinion. Obviously,
Exactly.
there's nothing objective about film when you think about it. There's no, well, absolutely everybody likes this or absolutely nobody likes this. Just kind of like how I love people are like, no, everybody hates Nickelback, and I'm like, then
I like
how?
Nickelback.
But like, how did they get famous then? How did they get a record deal? How do they sell at shows if nobody likes them?
Right, because people like me actually like Nickelback, and if you're listening to this and you don't like Nickelback, you have a problem because "Photograph" is a freaking awesome song until it was used inappropriately by the president. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
but
great song.
it exactly. It's just this weird, I don't know, narrative that people try to create online of like, well, no, we all have to hate this thing. Kind of like the new Roland Emmerich movie Midway came out this week, and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
someone like the Nostalgia Critic, who I used to watch when I was younger, like I think when I had just gone out of high school, I thought he was funny, but now I kind of can't stand him, and
mm-hmm.
he would always try to create this narrative of no, every Roland Emmerich movie is bad, we hate him. He's a bad filmmaker. You watch me, that means you have to feel this way too.
Right. I
And
think
he,
that, yeah. I'm sorry. Go
oh
ahead. I'm
sorry,
sorry.
and I just
Go
want to say, and he also did the same thing with Joel Schumacher, who's another director that I've learned to really enjoy and respect. Because who doesn't like Flatliners and Lost Boys? Like those are
Oh
good
my
movies.
gosh, those are my jams. Okay. It's like,
Like you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I know Batman and Robin wasn't a very good movie, but just because he made not one movie that wasn't
Hmm.
good doesn't mean his entire filmography isn't worth it.
So for me, that's kind of how I feel about um, just not one director in particular, but one that I will use as an example is like M. Night Shyamalan, right? Like, I feel like, so I have two things. One for that last statement and then the original thing we're talking about. But like with M. Night Shyamalan, it's like, for me personally, you could have 27 bad movies that you've put out. If one of those movies, and like if your 28th movie is good, the 28th movie is good. It's not automatically bad because the other 27 were bad. And I think that people don't look at things individually. Sometimes they just kind of lump it all into the same category. And it just so happens that with some directors, like M. Night, he had like it's like really good ones sprinkled in amongst the ones that are like, what the heck is happening here? You know what I mean? One of the ongoing jokes we have on our podcast is The Happening. Like, Tiffany hates The Happening. She hates it. I like it because I like movies sometimes that are bad, but they hit the point of being bad to where they're good to me. Like, it's like a weird thing for me, but it's like everything's just so ridiculous and it's so piled on and it's like just so weird that I'm just like, okay, I love this now. Like with the Sharknado, but it wasn't crazy looking like Sharknado. So I think that people need to take a moment to kind of step back and stop this like group think, whether it's thinking together as a group of like, we don't like this, we're the mean girls, you can't sit with us on Wednesdays, we were pink type thing, or this group think of like, oh, he put out this, and so now everything is going to be bad because it's by the same person, and not looking at the piece of content or piece of art individually, right?
Exactly. And the funny thing is because I definitely have enjoyed The Happening on a similar way that you do, that like I
Mm-hmm.
watch it because it's funny. Like I found a
Mm-hmm.
DVD for $5 at Kmart and that's sitting on my shelf right now. And the funny thing is, like, I showed it to my friend. I think it was last year. Like, I invited him over. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make you a pizza, and we're gonna watch The Happening. That's
Right.
the deal. Like, you get free pizza, but at the same time, I'm gonna make you watch this bad movie. And he was like, okay. And
Right.
the funny thing is, with rewatching it, I kind of found a new way to respect it in a weird way because when you watch it now,
Hmm.
it's funny that this movie is such a time capsule
Yeah.
because it was made in the early 2000s, so there's so many characters that are saying, "Wait, is it terrorist? Is it a terrorist attack?"
Right, right,
And
right.
it's crazy to think of now, but when it was the early 2000s, when this was, just after 9/11, like, there was that kind
Hmm.
of fear that, like, anything could happen, and we just
Hmm.
weren't sure where the next tragedy was gonna come from.
Exactly. Or how or what.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there's things I love about it. Even like if you just remove the comedy, the message in it, it's still very good because it was the early 2000s. And we're talking about then the disappearance of bees starting to become prominent and how that is a direct link into the survival of humanity and just the earth in general. And that the earth does not, has a limited amount of time. And now we're what, like 20 years outside of what they're saying could be like the end of the world, right? And so it's like one of those things where like people didn't heed the warning because, not that saying M. Night was the only person talking about it because he clearly was not. But, he did put out a piece of work that was kind of like, well, what if, everything that we're doing had a direct response that came from the earth and, it took care of the problem itself since we won't. So just different things like that. Like I just really enjoy the movie for the bad parts of it, but then also like the underlying messages and things that are woven throughout it.
Exactly. Yeah, I would hope that people could see it in a different way, not just as a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the points we both mentioned, because I think it definitely, especially if you're like Generation Z and you were born in the 2000s and you don't know about that kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
panic. Because I remember being like, 9 years old when 9/11 happened and just being really confused and scared
Mm-hmm.
and unsure of a lot of things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I live in DC now and I grew up in Southern Maryland for the most part. And when that happened, it was down the street from home. My parents work in DC and the towers, as far as like cell phone towers and things, were down. You couldn't reach anybody. We got home. My parents still weren't home. We didn't know, anything. And so we seriously, like, I think it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night when they came in on 9/11, and we were just so happy to see them because I'm the oldest. I wasn't I wasn't ready to have a younger brother and sister I had to take care of, and we would have been separated because I wasn't of age, and so it's just a lot, and it's people don't understand going through all of that, and sometimes they look back at these movies and they don't have that lens of like, oh man, people really did feel that way, or that really was an issue, and that would have been your first thought back then.
Exactly. So I would hope that in the coming years, hopefully that movie will get reevaluated a little bit. I mean, maybe not as a great movie, but definitely as a movie that had good points to it, at least.
Exactly. Yeah. I would love that for a lot of movies. I think that once people kind of get off their high horse and like get out of their need to have a tribe that thinks and feels about things exactly as they do, that they'll be more open to just stating how they feel about something honestly and truly without wondering if anybody is judging them for it. That's one of the reasons I have no qualms whatsoever of talking about my love for Twilight. I know people hate Twilight. I love Twilight and I will always love Twilight, and no one's ever going to stop me from loving it. Why I will watch Infinity War. You make fun of me like jokingly. I know it's not like a real make fun of me, but you make fun of me jokingly because I will watch. I don't care if it's on TV or if it just happens to scroll across. I'm gonna watch it. It's gonna happen. Um, or and like SVU, Law and Order SVU is something I do that with too, which I don't think people really realize. But I've seen every episode of SVU and will watch it like it's the first time I've ever seen it. And for better or for worse, I'll talk about these things regardless of how other people feel about them because I enjoy them. And so I think my role as somebody who talks about movies and films and entertainment, pop culture in general, is to put my thoughts and feelings out there because maybe I'm the only person who feels that way about something, but maybe I'm not. And there's somebody who can identify with me who doesn't feel comfortable saying any of these things out loud because everybody else, it's just the popular thing to not say that or to talk badly about it or whatever.
Okay, yeah, well, okay, so that's a lot to unpack. First off, first off, because I'm like, oh shoot, I got like three different things I want to comment on. First off, yeah, we need to end the Twilight hate at this point because when those movies came out, it was 2008. I was still in high school, and
Mhm.
of course, I hated them, even though I didn't have to watch them. They didn't affect me whatsoever. Like,
Mhm.
but I was a teenage boy. I was dumb. I was just like, I hate these movies because I'm supposed to. And now the funny thing is, like a decade later, thinking about it again, I'm like, but why though? Why did
Mhm.
I care so much? Like, if those movies came out today, I'd just be like, oh, okay, that's not for me, and then like move on with my life.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
just silly that people are uh willing to just, I don't know, hate on it just because it's not for them. Like, it's for a very specific audience. The funny thing is, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I talked about this with Siobhan earlier this year about how we definitely are, like, the United States is definitely a society that doesn't like teenage girls, if we're going
Oh
to
no,
be honest.
women in general,
Women in
but
general, but we
yeah.
especially like to pick on teenage girls
Mhm.
because A, they can't fight back, and B, we feel that it's okay. I mean,
Mhm.
you can look back at, movies and society for like a long time. Like, I think I was listening to Critically Acclaimed yesterday. They were talking about, I think they were talking about Critters, if I remember correctly, about how like the two main characters in that movie is like a 12-year-old boy and then his older teenage sister. And because the 12-year-old boy is the protagonist, you're supposed to not like the teenage sister because
Mhm.
he doesn't. And I mean, that's true. There's a lot of movies where you can say that, where the protagonist doesn't care for the teenage girl,
Right.
and so you're supposed to hate, or something even like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where like
Mhm. Mhm.
Jennifer Grey is in the right, she is correct, but because it's Ferris Bueller's movie, you're not supposed to like her as a person.
Right.
Um, and it's ridiculous. We need to stop doing that because when you're a teenager, like, you're at your most fragile,
Yeah.
obviously.
And I
And
yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
no, no, go on, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that is a big reason why people didn't like it was because it was popular amongst teenage girls. And when you look at things like boy bands who have become just a band, like the Beatles, originally the thing that sprung them to popularity were girls, and then it was like, oh, we hate the Beatles, and it was like, oh, their music's actually pretty good. We never gave it a chance. Okay, now they're just a band, and everybody can like the Beatles, So I mean, the fact that you even call it a boy band versus a band, it says a lot. And so, like for me, I don't think that, and I've said this before, and we recorded a podcast, and I wish that the sound didn't get messed up, but I don't love Twilight for being a great movie. I don't. I have a lot of memories that are attached to Twilight, so it becomes nostalgic for me. But then also there are things that like some of the themes that I don't think is executed as well as it could be. And it is one of those things where I actually make fun of the movie a lot because it's so bad it's good sort of thing. But I still have a place for it in my heart. And there's no one who's gonna be able to come and say like we hate Twilight, so you should hate Twilight, and that's going to change my opinion. And I just wish that people who, if they hate it because they saw it and they just really hate it, or they just are hating on it, I wish that they would give those actors some grace to not judge them and say that the peak of their performance in their career and the potential that they have is tied to this movie that they don't enjoy, like with the Batman Outlash and things like that.
Exactly, because yeah, Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart have had amazing careers
Mhm.
ever
Mhm.
since those movies ended, and it's sad
Mhm.
that a lot of people just want to pretend like that never happened and,
Exactly.
yeah,
Mhm.
treat them like it's 2008 again, even though, I mean, it's come out that both of them did not enjoy being in those films.
Right.
Because I mean, that happens all the time where like you need to pay the bills.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're in a movie you don't like. Like, I can't remember the actress's name, but the in the original Friday the 13th movie, the woman that plays Jason's mom,
Mhm. Mhm.
she absolutely hated that movie,
Mhm.
and she despised slasher movies like that, but she
Mhm.
needed to pay bills.
Exactly. And this was like a breakout film for a lot of people. And so it's like it's one of those things where you had the opportunity. No, you don't really particularly love it, but you're tied in. You go ahead and you finish it out strong, and You didn't care for it, but take away what you enjoyed from it and what you learned from it. That's how I look at it. Even with jobs, like I am currently in a position where I am not following my dreams. I am not doing anything close to what I would want to do with my life. But all I can do is look back on the experiences and on every opportunity that I had to say, okay, I'm not really enjoying this, but what can I take from it and what can I use to, like, how can I apply it to something in the future or when my opportunity does come? And I think that even from the actor standpoint is something that a lot more people need to just learn how to do, is just kind of stop complaining or talking badly on things that have helped you out and think about the good things and apply those going forward and leave the bad things in the past.
Exactly. And I mean, I do want to address that you talked about how you like things that are unpopular. And I mean, obviously, that's kind of my whole business model.
Right.
Because for audience members who might not know, I'll go into a little explanation. So obviously, like I said at the beginning of the show, I love pulp a lot. I love to distribute pulp and movie serials that were inspired by pulp. And the thing is about pulp, it's inspired a ridiculous amount of content that we still enjoy today. And I think it's funny that the writers and the creators and the characters will never get the credit for it.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
people, because even if you Google pulp today, you'll still get like synonyms will be like trash and tacky and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
funny thing is, because the pulp started out, in books, written on really cheap pulp paper, and they costed a dime. They were dime novels. And the
Mhm.
whole point of that was because they were content for working class people. These were
Mhm.
books that
Mhm.
working class people can afford to purchase, and they can read about. And obviously they were, they were these, grand adventure stories and whatnot, because they needed, escapism during like the Great Depression and during World War II. This is when these things were very popular. And especially with movie serials, like they were very, very cheap productions. And
Mhm.
if you were a kid, you'd go see the new chapter of the movie serial. Like you'd go take your quarter and go down to the theater, and you'd get your ticket and maybe even have money for drinking and popcorn, because that's just how cheap it was. It was.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think because this material was for working class people, and it knew what it was. That's what I do like about pulp. Like, it's self-aware in the way that they know they're not making Oscar material,
Mhm.
but at the same time, like, they don't wink at the audience necessarily.
Right.
Like, it's not like they're self-aware to the point where they make fun of themselves.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
take it 100% seriously, and that's what I love about it, because it feels really sincere. Uh,
Yeah.
kind of like I was watching this trashy movie last night. Oh my gosh, I was watching
That's my favorite kind.
The Wicked Lady starring Faye Dunaway,
Uh
which
huh. Uh
starts
huh.
out. And did you ever watch The Favorite from last year?
That's the one with Emma Stone, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so basically, this movie starts out really similar to The Favorite, to the point where I think Yorgos Lanthimos might have seen this movie and then made The Favorite, because there's
Okay.
this woman who's gonna marry this Ralph guy. This guy's, loaded. He's rich. He
Mhm.
has good standing. And it takes place in England, just like The Favorite.
Hmm.
And then she invites her sister to come be a bridesmaid at the wedding, and her sister's Faye Dunaway. So of course, within the first 20 minutes, her sister has devised a plan to weasel her way in there and steal the husband away. Similar to what Emma Stone tries to do in The Favorite,
Mhm.
except Faye Dunaway obviously does it more successful, because 20 minutes we're in and out. She already has that plan done. And so
Right.
then she realizes she actually didn't want that guy,
Mhm.
and she gets really bored. She's like, "Oh man, being rich is actually really, like, really boring and
Mhm.
not enjoyable." So what she does is, like, she takes one of the bedrooms in the mansion, because she doesn't want to sleep with him anymore.
Mhm.
And it turns out the bedroom that she takes has like a secret passageway that leads out of the mansion. And
Oh my
so she
gosh.
like she like dons a mask and like an outfit, and she becomes like a highwayman or a highwaywoman, I guess it would be. And so
Mhm.
she just starts robbing rich people for fun. But it's not like Robin Hood or Zorro or anything, like, because Robin Hood
Right.
and
Right.
Zorro,
Right.
they always give it to the poor. She's like,
Right.
screw that. I have a chest in my room. I'm keeping it. And the funny thing is, it's not like she needs it. It's not like they're very well off. She does
Right.
it for the fun of it, and she does it
Hmm.
to fight off boredom.
Right.
And this is, like I said, this is such a trashy pulp movie because it starts out as this weird period drama, and then, like I said, she's shooting guns, and there's this whip fight between her and another woman over this guy, which is awesome.
Okay, I'm gonna have to watch this movie. I'm gonna have to
Oh,
watch this one.
yeah, no, 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 it's on Vudu for free right now with ads, so you
Oh,
just got to
awesome.
watch
Yeah,
like an
I think
ad every 20 minutes,
yeah, but that's not bad.
but it's really worth it. And I just love the fiction.
Mhm.
Uh, Faye Dunaway gives 110%.
Mhm.
Like, she's literally given it. I mean, that's what I do love about her, because I know she's not a very good human being. That's why she doesn't act anymore. Because
Mhm.
people didn't want to work with her because she was just like not a necessarily like a good person on the set.
Mhm.
Because even like someone like Betty Davis said that Faye Dunaway was the absolute worst person that she ever worked with in her entire career.
Oh wow.
I know, and this is after obviously Betty Davis's lifelong feud with Joan Crawford, but she had more respect for Joan Crawford than Faye Dunaway because she just said Faye Dunaway was terrible.
That's crazy.
And
You know, I
so,
wouldn't know because I never know anything about actors and things. I
well,
just like
I
watch.
only know this because of the feud miniseries that was on FX by Ryan Murphy.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the only way I know about that. I learned about that a couple years ago. That's a really good miniseries, by the way.
I have to watch because I do like mostly everything he does. I don't think
Yeah,
there's been anything that he's done that I haven't enjoyed.
no, in my opinion, this is his best work because
Okay.
it doesn't go off the rails. That's how I feel about most seasons of American Horror Story. It
Mm,
just got like
yeah.
it starts off really good, and then you're just like, oh no.
I feel like that is the thing that like if you are okay with that because you know it's gonna happen every season, right? So like I feel like every season after like Murder House, or after Coven. Coven was a good season. Oh gosh, Coven was a great season. But even that got a little ridiculous at times. They were just able to reel it back in. I think if you know that about American Horror Story, you can just enjoy it because you're like, oh, okay, happened sooner than I thought, or happened later than I thought, but I knew it was coming. Oh
And then I just want to say sorry for dominating the conversation. I just got really hyped on
no
that
no
movie.
no no no! That was fine because you just taught me about a new movie that I am going to watch. So
Oh, don't worry, you won't be disappointed at all.
I am so excited
Um,
about
yeah,
that.
because so like I said, it's funny because I love Faye Dunaway's performances in every movie I see her in, but
Hmm.
like I'm like, oh wait, no, but I'm well aware why she doesn't act anymore because nobody likes working with her.
Right, which is crazy. It's crazy to, well, I always say it's crazy if you're given the opportunity and support to pursue a dream or pursue a goal that you have, and you kind of ruin it or take advantage of it because of like your own like selfishness. That's insane to me because there's so many people who will never have the chance to do what they love or chase a dream, whether it be acting or being a doctor or being like a tightrope walker. It doesn't matter. They just won't get the opportunity to do it, or have the support to do it. And so, like, for you to squander yours on selfishness is just insane.
Exactly. Um, and what I don't like the most, I don't know if this is just me, it really bothers me
Hmm.
when people, I mean, I respect him, but people like Kurt Cobain, when he's like, I never wanted to be famous. And I'm like, but you started a band and you signed a record deal and you went on a tour. You actively did things in order to become, because everyone talks about how hard it is to break into any industry
Yeah.
at all and how many years you have to struggle and have to claw your way up. And
Hmm.
then like you'll have people saying like, no, I never wanted to be famous. I'm like, but you actively worked at it for years.
Right. And I get kind of what they're saying because it's one of those things where like you just want to do the art and everything else that comes with it. Sometimes, yeah, some of those things are a bonus and some of those things are a burden, right? Like I do think to a certain extent, especially when you reach like this just pivotal peak of like infamous like status, that fame does become a burden. It's hard because it's hard for you to just exist as a human being, but you still want to do the art and you want to be successful at what you do. That's just like human nature. If you are putting effort into something that you love, you want it to be successful. It just so happens that in our society, a lot of things that you become successful at also make you famous, which isn't what people necessarily ask for. I think the difference is when people say like I never really wanted to be famous, but they're still like very appreciative and grateful for everything that they have versus I never wanted to be famous and this sucks. And I hate that this is, when they're speaking so negatively on it, it's like, dude, come on, like understand like you're here because you're successful and that's ultimately what you wanted. So I get that like the fame part of it, it's annoying to have people who like stalk you 24/7, but also like you can always stop, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like Lady Gaga on Twitter. I don't know if you saw that like a week or two ago. She just tweeted out she's like fame is a prison, and then somebody quote tweeted her and they're like no, prison is a prison.
Right, right. I'm like, people, choose your words. Choose your words wisely. It doesn't matter how quote unquote woke some people are, they're always gonna come around and be like, that's why I always tell people don't get too pretentious in your wokeness because you finally identify and understand with people who are going through something that you haven't. Because inevitably you're gonna slip up because there are areas that you just don't get yet, you know? So like just give everybody a little bit of grace. I think that's like the lesson of our episode. It's like just give people grace.
Exactly, because just because you feel empathy from someone doesn't mean you necessarily know what it's like from
Mhm.
their perspective.
Mhm.
Because like as much as I can empathize, with women or African American people or trans people, like I don't know what it is like to live a day in their life necessarily.
Exactly. Mhm.
Because obviously, I mean, you'll have some people that are woke, they're more understanding, but like you'll say something to them like, I can't believe this person said that to me, and they'll be like, wait a minute, I don't know why you're upset about that little thing.
Mhm.
And it's like unless you've experienced microaggressions, especially toward you, you will never understand how it feels to experience that.
Exactly. Like we all know I posted a a series. I was a three-part series. It was just three pictures. Or four pictures that like broke my heart and it was my ultimate bae, Chris Evans. When the brother of the guy who was shot by the cop in I think it was in Texas in his own apartment. When the brother got up there and kind of like forget like oh I forgive her and don't punish her and all this other stuff and Chris responded and quote tweeted it of like this is like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I was like oh baby, like it's not though, it's not because a lot of times people are always put in a position of having to be like the more forgiving people because they're not able to express the hurt and the pain that they have and saying, no, I don't forgive you right now. And not saying that this is what this person went through, but it's just a narrative that is consistently pushed, especially when it comes to like Black people who have gone through something or like women who have gone through something. And it's like, okay, they did this, but I forgive them. And that's the story that they push instead of the story they need to be pushing of why it's okay that this person shot this other person and nothing is really happening in the grand scheme of things, right? And so it's like people know he's one for being very vocal about kind of injustices and things like that. But that's something he still didn't even understand in tweeting what he tweeted and how that would be perceived. And it's just one of those things where like, you have to take a step back to think like, is this really the way that I perceive it through my lens of my privilege, or is this something that like maybe I should just kind of sit this one out? And I think that a lot of people don't understand. It really is free to mind your business or to like not say anything. Sometimes, like, just sit back and watch it unfold.
Exactly, because it's nice when people are supportive, but sometimes they're reaching for those extra brownie points of wokeness, and
Hmm.
you know what I mean. And then you're like, okay, I see what you're doing. It's a little pandering. Please stop.
Exactly. I'm like, just cut it back. Like Tiffany calls it woke points, and I love that. So like now that's all I refer to. It's like you're not getting woke points for this. Just sit down.
Exactly, or like with the LGBT and then all the other letters. I guess somebody they were talking about this on Linoleum Knife. If you don't know, it's hosted by two
Hmm.
gay critics that are married to each other. and they were
Okay. Okay.
talking about how some people add in an A to the LGBT,
Oh yeah,
Q
for
for
allies.
ally,
Oh
and they
my
were talking
goodness.
about like, do allies need their own letter? And I'm thinking
No.
like, I'm an ally, but no, I do not.
Right, right. That's how I feel too. Like I'm an ally. If you want to group allies, just put me in the plus sign. I'm a part of the plus. You know what I mean? I don't need my own letter. You don't have to add that in. I for the longest time I thought A was like asexual or something like that. So and I was like, oh okay, yeah, okay. But then they told me it was like for ally, and I was like, take it off right now. Like that is such like a one of those things where it's like I am an ally and I need to be acknowledged for the fact that like I'm not like everyone else. And it's so annoying.
Exactly, because you should not be rewarded for doing something you were supposed to be doing in the first place.
Exactly. That is I think that is the lesson of the day, right? It's you should be a good human being. Why do you feel like you need acknowledgement and, you know, not appreciation, but like some sort of award, a golden star for just being a good human?
Exactly. Okay, so before we go, definitely because we were talking about Faye Dunaway earlier, I just want to point out that it's completely and utterly possible that she got her revenge on Hollywood by saying the wrong name at the Oscars a few years ago. I'm just saying.
She might have. She might have.
That was her revenge. She can read. She's like, this is what you get for not hiring me anymore.
I there's certain people like her being a bad person or whatever. Like I'm gonna have to watch the Ryan Murphy series and then also do my own research because you've made fun of me before. You know that I like have blinders on when it comes to people like outside of kind of the art, and so one thing I can say is like people like her, people like Dionne Warwick, Aretha Franklin, just the petty women of Hollywood and of industry. I just aspire to be them when I'm an old lady. Like I want to be that petty as well. Like, oh, I'm sorry, did I read the wrong name? Oh, my bad. I'm old. I'm sorry. Like that's goals right there.
Exactly. And if you remember, Warren Beatty was the one that came out and apologized. She never came out back on stage to
Right.
apologize with him. Which makes me think like Warren Beatty went backstage and then his wife Annette Bening was like, no, you go out and apologize, damn it.
He's like,
Because
but
we all
wait
know
a
Annette
minute.
Bening is the best one out of that group, I'm just saying.
Right. That's so funny.
So
Oh,
she
that's
probably like hit him with her purse and she was like, damn it, you go apologize.
right. He's like, I don't want to go back out there.
She's like, no, you need to stop.
You go out there right now and you say an apology. Oh my goodness, that's
Uh,
hilarious.
okay. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for
I
having me.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, we definitely had way too much fun. We've been recording for almost an hour already.
Oh my goodness, look at us.
I know, but it's okay. That's good. That's good. That means we're having a lot of fun. I really enjoyed
Exactly,
this.
exactly. And we had like great conversation. It's so good to be able to speak to somebody else about some of the things that you feel as a minority who's on a different side of that coin, right? Like the same coin, different side. Like you experience things that I'll never experience and vice versa. But we have like a lot of similar thoughts on some things because we're both out here just like trying to get our thoughts and opinions and perspectives out there. And I appreciate the whole beginning of that conversation and then the laughs that came at the end. And I made it through this whole interview without getting made fun of for watching Marvel movies. So I'm excited about that too.
That's okay. See, the funny thing is, like, I joke, but like, you literally live across an entire country from me, so the amount of times you watch that does not affect me whatsoever. But if we were like, but if we were like roommates living in the same household, I'd be throwing that DVD out the window. I'm just saying.
Oh, I love you so much. Even more
You
now.
too. You too. All right. I think that's a good place to end.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
I just want to say goodbye to everybody and thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Goodbye.